I am the Chief Transformation Officer at Capital Certainty. We are a European digital champion. I would like to thank Digital University for allowing me to address this selected audience at HRCom. So greetings to Joita, to Anna, and to all of you. During the next minutes, I would like to bring to your attention the growing gap that we are observing between what's happening in the world out there and what's happening inside your organization. Because my thesis is that that growing gap is precisely fueling the Great Resignation. If anything, the pandemic gave us plenty of time to reflect on those differences. Confinement was a great opportunity to individually re-evaluate our purpose, our priorities, and our expectations. And now, confinement is over, it is time to take that conversation inside the organization, to re-evaluate priorities, to review certainties that were foundational to our organization, and to rethink where, why, and how we work the way we do. Some companies are basically taking an employee-centric approach to this challenge, which I believe is very interesting to improving retention and engagement. For example, they're embracing flexibility, they're offering career growth opportunities, they're expanding company wellness policies, or they are strengthening manager direct report relationships. That all makes sense, but I would argue that these measures do not pair the speed of the changes that we are experiencing. Jack Welch suggested that if the rate of change outside the organization exceeds the rate of change inside the organization, the end might be near. Moreover, not only the speed, but also the depth of the changes is greater than we imagine. What I mean here is that there might be deeper logics that we need to observe to prevent the great turnover. So let's address some of those logics. To begin with, the organization's rework should to some extent reflect the type of work that we do. I mean, that seems like a fair aspiration. During the Industrial Revolution, the main innovation was the assembly line. The challenge was to scale efficiency and control, and hence the best suited approach was a hierarchy. Organizations were silos on purpose because that was a necessity. We now think of silos in negative terms, but it was a critical component for the growth and control during many generations. But we no longer work in assembly lines, do we? Today we are more using to hitting keys on phones and laptops. Today's workplace is network-based. The center of gravity has moved away from the assembly line to the network. But for the better part, our organization's architecture is still not there. We are still very hierarchical, all across the board, and in general, management is still extremely bureaucratic. Each department works on themselves, they're judged by their own performance. Sales makes a deal and it tosses it to production. Production tries to run it without clashing with marketing. Then marketing has its own battle with finance, and then finance battles everybody else. So maybe it's time to rethink a little bit the operating systems, how we organize ourselves. I have the feeling that we are in a transitional period towards new organizational architectures. Tony Oettinger suggested that digital technologies are the solvent leaching the glue out of our institutions. I believe the next big thing, the next big innovation will actually not be technological, but precisely on the way we organize ourselves. But we still do not have a clear image of what that looks like. And that is a problem because it generates uncertainty. So once again, we tend to go back to the hierarchical organizational architecture because it's so much easier to communicate, to refer to it, to understand than a fuzzy network of dependencies. Alas, we know hierarchy will no longer work, at least not for those new purposes of innovation, scaling collaboration, accelerate learning. Another fair aspiration is that our work should evolve as the technology advances, right? See, Mark Andreessen warned us some 15 years ago. Software is eating the world, he said. But I don't think we really understood the extent to which this statement would be true. Because today, literally everything is being digitized. And I'm not talking only about communication or software or information-enabled products and services. I'm talking about knowledge itself. It's being digitized with AI and with integrated knowledge management systems. I'm also talking about trust becoming code and being digitized. I'm talking about the property being tokenized, fractionalized, financialized, and have a greater liquidity than ever, because now it is digital. I'm talking about the new digital ways to store value, the digital replacement to gold, and then the CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies, becoming precisely that, digital currencies. I'm talking about the identity and the presence being digitized. I'm talking about virtual reality, augmented realities, and the metaverse changing the rules of engagement and amplifying the sense of presence. I'm talking about digital twins. Now everybody wants to talk about digital twins. True collaboration pipeline between manufacturers and clients. Completely changed the logic, and these digital replicas are becoming even more valuable than the physical model they represent. To that extent, to the extent that everything is being digitized, maybe we need to ask ourselves, what is the natural environment for the digital? Is it the office? See, precisely for this last section, I would like to reflect a little bit about the office. We've seen some arguments suggesting that maybe the office is no longer the best fit for everyday work. Recently, the CEO of Airbnb, Brian Chesky, stated that working in the office is already a relic from the past, an anachronistic form that corresponds to the pre-digital era. I think the office as we know is over, he said. We have to move on. We can't try to hold on to 2019 any more than to 1950. I happen to be an architect. I've designed and being internationally recognized for designing office spaces. And you can imagine I'm really curious about the topic and the relevance of the office in the future. Brian Chesky added, if the office did not exist today, would we invent it? And if we did invent it, why we invent it? For? What do you think? In my opinion, benefits for workers and talent attraction are obvious, so I'll not jump into that. But truly, I guess there's no blank carpet for this. Are offices good, bad, remote, hybrid? That basically depends on your industry, on your sector, or on your specific activity. If your concern is productivity, McKinsey published a paper recently called The Business Case for Remote Work that I would strongly recommend you take a look at. The claim is that during the pandemic, productivity went actually up as employees switched to remote work. But still, many people are not convinced. It is half productive, we think. Half productive? That's not really what the numbers said. And why half productive? I mean, if your employees cannot be trusted, they won't magically become trustworthy in the office. But still, there might be some things that are irreplaceable, that really need to happen in the office. Let's analyze some of those irreplaceable functions. What are they exactly? The cafeteria might actually be one of them, or the water cooler. I mean, they are very beneficial because the kind of interactions, systematic interactions that happen there are really good for camaraderie and culture. But are we really going to invest in an office just to mingle in the cafeteria? Probably not. Given the choice, we would probably find better alternatives than the office. Okay, but here comes a big one. What about creativity and innovation? That is probably the most relevant question here. How are serendipity, creativity, and innovation affected by remote work? I mean, this idea of serendipity is actually a very important issue, to the point that it's been part of a philosophy of science. We used to describe the fortunate combination of conditions where innovation emerges and where discoveries are made. And I'm quoting here Merton and Barber. So the aim that we have is to increase the bump rate, the chances of meeting someone new and excited. Because from these meetings and exchanges, new ideas, new cultures, and new practices emerge. But when we think about serendipity, we almost automatically think of serendipity in terms of physical interaction. But what about the digital? There was this famous article in 2009 in the New York Times, signed by Damon Darling, asking this rhetoric question: is serendipity lost in the digital age? That idea was the dominant train of thought for the last decades. Serendipity decreases when in-person interaction decreases. But again, what about the digital? Those studies made sense when there was no real alternative to physical interactions. But that indeed has changed today. Now, two separate studies published at MIT's Law and Management Review suggest that innovation has actually not been impeded, but it might have been boosted by remote work. Serendipity is more frequent in Zoom calls than among pedestrians in a city. I mean, if you enter a bar, you'll probably find the majority of people looking down at their devices, and it'll almost feel weird to interact with those people in person, because we did not receive explicit permissions like we do in Tinder or LinkedIn. Collaboration is nowadays done online. Telepresence reduces the time required for interaction, information sharing. And we can meet more easily with a greater diversity of people. We can create or leverage those weak connections in a way that otherwise would be hardly to take place in physical. That is a really fertile ground for serendipity. In a third separate study published in MIT by a team led by Ben Laker, professor at the University of Reading, reports that among certain forward-looking companies, the pace of innovation has accelerated, leading to better outcomes for employees and customers. Why is that? Because creativity benefits from this diversity of perspectives and opinions, and normally the established protocol for interaction in a video conference setup, such as this one, are more protective of the diversity of opinions. Because normally, everybody's turn of voice is respected. In contrast to in-person meeting, where people tend to engage in simultaneously cross-talk, virtual meetings make it nearly impossible for more than one person to speak at once. So we are forced to focus on individual input. And that makes it easier for less vocal participants to be heard than in the physical world. With the press of the button, we can orchestrate, we can facilitate meetings, we can control the size of the break groups and enforce time constraints. See, there's many things regarding to the benefits of the Zoom calls and the interactions that we have to foster creativity. And we are just starting at the beginning of the curve. On an immediate horizon, we see new technologies and new capabilities for these video conference systems, like, for example, maintaining the eye contact with the people at the other side. And that's just one of them. I insist, we're in the infancy of these technologies. But see, we can acquire completely different approaches to hacking serendipity in organizations. We could argue that the random interactions in the city, in the street, at office might be very beneficial, but maybe if we can introduce a layer of data to those interactions, we could actually create serendipity engines. That's what I've been doing with Capital Certainty for the last 2 years. We've been working on an engine precisely to hack serendipity and to precipitate the conversations that I would love to see happening inside and around the organization. I actually gave a TEDx talk on the topic that I invite you to take a look at. That was back in 2009, but still relevant, I would say. Now I'm heading to my conclusion. As you might see, I am a defender of remote work, but I don't think there's a blank statement or a single answer to all of the situations. Office first might be in fact better for some businesses. Different companies with different business models and different workflows might have different needs. Some will be more hardware or physical related, physical specific. Others might be more related to the digital or the software. And within the very same company, different job posts might have different needs. But what I believe is unequivocal is that we need to review the most basic assumptions. Because if we do that, maybe we'll find that the question, the dichotomy of hybrid versus in-person versus remote, or even the concept of the Great Resignation no longer become relevant. For example, we have seen a massive advance on robotization and even greater in AI. So we might find ourselves in a scenario of technological employment. Or it might be the case, like it is in my case, that I work for several entities. Therefore, systematic face-to-face present or interaction no longer makes sense at all. And see, we're not even making projections about the future yet. The DAOs, automated organizations without people, or the concept of temporary organizations. Now technologies are driving down the cost of organizing ourselves. So maybe the companies will be only temporary. See, whatever happens in the future, I think it's very important to take a glance, because as we look forward, we might find that what is coming doesn't really point us back towards the office. Thank you.